nature, things of that 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 nature.
All right, welcome back into Pod of That Nature Live, another transfer portal edition, because guess what? They had an addition to the Razorback football team here just in the past 15 minutes as they landed a transfer defensive lineman from the Florida Gators by the name of Justus Boone. He's 6'4", 266 pounds, and he announced the decision along with some other players here today. But Curtis, we were talking just seems like 5 seconds ago. We're talking about needs, talking about what Arkansas needed to do. You had mentioned getting some edge rushers. Well, Arkansas at least got an edge rusher from the Florida Gators here with Justus Boone.
Yeah, they did that. So he pairs with Ken Talley now as the Michigan State transfer as defensive line additions for Arkansas here in the portal. This is I'm somewhat intrigued by this one with Justus Boone. Depending on where you look, he's pretty highly valued. I think he's borderline top 250 guy at 24/7, a little lower at on three. I think he's in the 500s, a 3-star transfer, 6'4", 266 pounds. He's been in the SEC for multiple years. This is interesting though, because in 2022, I thought, Justus Boone, just looking at the statistics, he had a pretty decent season. I think, he had 24 tackles. He had a sack. It looked like it was kind of a breakout type of year for him. Missed 2023 with an ACL tear. So this was his first year back coming off of that injury. You know how that goes. Only 10 tackles, on the season, only a half a sack. So there wasn't a lot of production, but I think about it and it's like, okay, he is coming off of the injury. He was playing behind some pretty good edge rushers there at Florida. So maybe there's something there, so not a guy who did it at an all SEC level. I'm not saying that, but he's an experienced SEC player with maybe some upside, and usually you get a little bit better the second year coming off of an injury. So maybe that's what they've got going on there. But like we said, man, they needed depth on that defensive line coming off the edge. They got that. I still think they need to go out and overpay for a stud, a no doubter. But between him and Ken Talley, you certainly added to the reps that you can have there on your defensive line.
Yeah, for this year, he had just 10 total tackles. Also, 2 of them solo, 8 of them assisted. Had a half sack, which came against UCF in that game earlier this season. And that's about it. He had also a 1 pass deflection on the season. So, the stats aren't going to jump out to you. I know a lot of people, Curtis, are going to fall in love with the fact that, he's from Florida or he's played for the Florida Gators. Therefore, this is going to be a huge get. And as it may sound a little bit contradictory, because I just said in the last stream that, hey, haven't gotten a lot of SEC caliber transfers or guys from other SEC schools, and this is one. I'm just trying to maybe temper a lot of people in that, and not saying he's a bad player, but this is not some sort of guy at the defensive end position that you just feel like, he's going to come in and be your next Landon Jackson. It's just not that type of guy, and you're hopeful for it. You mentioned coming off of that injury and having that second year. Experience helps always. That is a huge factor into it as well. But I just feel like, given the circumstances, you got to look at it for what it is. You got to look at it as a guy who played in the SEC against SEC offenses, and that's it. The stats aren't going to stand out to you. I don't know if he's going to come in and be the starter right away, or if it's going to be something he has to work into the mix. But again, you can look at it, and it can both be true. You can look at it as, hey, you added a much-needed position that was much needed in the depth side of things at the defensive end, while also looking at it as, this isn't going to be some sort of game-changing type of defensive line get. I think everybody would have rather, if they had the choice between the two, getting the kid from Georgia who went to USC earlier. Jarrett's, I forgot, what was his last name?
Garrett,
yeah, thank you. And so I feel like that would have been somebody you'd probably rather have, but still, this is a nice piece of depth, like with a guy who's an older player who has experience in the SEC.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, if you think about it, and again, it's not like a one-off, one-on-one comparison type deal, but you're not going to replace Landon Jackson. Like if you're going to come anywhere near that, you're going to have to pony up for it. But you also lost Nico Davier, and so you got to bring in some guys to kind of replace that production. I feel pretty good about just like Quincy Rhodes just being able to do that on his own. It wasn't like Nico was a world beater there, but he was solid. But yeah, between guys like Justus Boone, Ken Talley, I think you feel a little bit better about the fact that you've replaced that side of the equation on the defensive line, and probably improved in your two deep overall if you go out and get a bona fide starter there on the other side. So I think it's a nice addition. And I just hope, this is a little bit different than some of the other guys. Some of these guys were just like young and talented, but it hasn't popped for them. And this is a little bit different from the standpoint of, it looked like Justus Boone might've been on the verge of that breakout before the injury. And so now maybe you see if he can get something going. We just got another commit, didn't we?
We sure did.
All right.
So we may have to do a 2-for-1 here in this live stream as Jordan Young, the defensive back, has officially committed to the University of Arkansas.
Good.
Transfer from Cincinnati.
Yeah.
So there we go.
Yeah.
You had 2-for-1 folks here in one stream.
There we go. Right. No, Jordan Young is good, man. He was one that I really wanted as soon as I saw that he was going to visit Arkansas earlier in the week. Let me pull up his stats here, but Cincinnati, I know maybe it's a little bit different since what's his name? Fickle has left, but usually they're pretty salty on the defensive side. And then hell, you got Jaheim Thomas from there last year. He wound up being a really good linebacker for you. So they usually have some dudes who can play. But I like Jordan Young. Looking at his numbers this year, he had 35 tackles. Did he come up with a pick? No, he had a pick last year. But he was pretty solid, graded out pretty well in PFF, and I'll pull those up. Since we're doing this in real time, it's going to take me a minute.
Yeah.
But that's a really good get. So again, like, still plenty of work to do. You missed on a couple, top targets there, but I think the secondary has definitely improved today between Quintavious, who I really like from Eastern Michigan, and then Jordan Young here. I think you've done a pretty damn good job on the secondary end of things. This is good. This is again, another guy here. So this becomes, I add him to Quintavious, to the two offensive linemen, as guys who I look at that Arkansas has added. And I say, okay, they got dudes who can play and contribute and make an impact for them right away. This is a good get.
Yeah. And so that's where it comes into play of, we just talked about the defensive line and the edge rushers of trying to get guys that can really help you out. But the secondary, I agree that they've done so far a really good job of adding some pieces in here. This is a cornerback, by the way, because they got the safety earlier. Now it's a cornerback. But he's a guy that's 6 feet tall, 197 pounds. He had 19 solo tackles this season for Cincinnati, had 5 pass deflections, started in every game and played in every game for him. So that's always big to when you have a guy that's not, we got benched for someone better because he wasn't any good or anything. I mean, he was the guy. Cincinnati wasn't the best team ever this season, but he's a junior, so it looks like he's going to have at least 2 years of eligibility remaining for him when he comes to Arkansas. And he also is, ironically enough, another player that started his career at Florida originally. So that's something he in 2021 and 2022 played for Florida both years. And in 22 had 10 tackles as well as 1 pass deflection. But then once he got to Cincinnati, he just, I don't want to say caught on fire, but he definitely became a perennial starter for 2 straight seasons at Cincinnati. And of course, Cincinnati being in the Big 12 this past year. So yeah, that's it's one of those things where I if you want to take a position groups, the secondary, Arkansas, give them credit. They've done a really good job this transfer portal so far.
Yeah, secondary and offensive line, they've impressed me with what they've been able to do here. Jordan Young, I got his PFF grades pulled up. Once you get over that 70 mark in PFF, that's you're usually a pretty good player, especially when you played as much as he does. Overall defense grade 72.2. That's really solid, well within the top half of qualifying corners. Coverage grade 73.4. So that's good. We talked about it, man. Like, they just need dudes who can cover receivers. Yes. The more man coverage you can play, the better, right? So that's good. And then he was pretty solid in run defense, 69, nice overall there. But I think this is a solid addition, and that's a couple of them in the secondary today. So I'm happy with it. Yeah.
And we know that, of all the position groups that they need the most help with, obviously it was everything, but the secondary, even though this past season, I know the numbers don't always say it, but this past season, the secondary, statistically speaking, was not great. And pass defense. I mean, Arkansas was still one of the worst teams in the SEC in pass defense and in passing yards given up. So it's not like, oh man, you got to replace all these bona fide dudes. It's like, but you got to remember, you got to replace Jalen Braxton, which I know he didn't play at all this season, but he was somebody that you had on the roster that you were counting on. You have to replace him. You got to replace a guy like Cuddy. You got to replace, I assume, Hudson Clark, because again, his fiance is going to kill him if he comes back for another year. So you got all these other pieces that you're having to replace, and it's almost like a wholesale thing, just like in other position groups. It's a wholesale deal here in the secondary, and again, if you're able to get guys that are experienced, that are coming from places where they grade out heavily, and they're guys you can just step in and be serviceable. I don't think no one should expect any player or Arkansas to go into the portal and get their next, somebody like a Chris Houston, or a Cam Curl, one of these NFL caliber bona fide dudes from the secondary. That's what you're hopeful for. But again, I keep going back to it. It just goes back to getting good enough guys. Because I think it was after the Tennessee game, Curtis. I remember we did our post game show of that, and we talked about how great the secondary was doing in that, and mainly the defense in general, but mainly the secondary, where it's not that they had a great players. They just played well together. Yeah. And I feel like that's kind of what Arkansas is going to have to do, is just, yes, you want great players, but get guys that play really well together, that communicate really well, that do just enough to give the offense opportunities to win. Because like we talked about this year, the defense, you look at the stats, we just talked about secondary and pass defense, it wasn't that good. However, there was not many games where the defense was the reason why you lost. A lot of the cases, the defense did their job. And I think you got to expect that to happen again this upcoming season, where the defense just has to do a good enough job to help, and the offense has to help them out by scoring points. That's what has to happen at the end of the day.
Yeah. Are you saying that they need to play complementary football?
I think that's the term. I think that's what they call it these days. Yes.
Is that where we're at here?
Mm-hmm.
No, this is good for Arkansas. I mean, hell, Jordan Young on 3, at least he's the number 118 overall transfer out of more than 6,000 guys in the portal. Like he's good, well regarded. He's still listed as a 3-star. I don't know how that stuff works, but I thought that would be a 4-star addition. So a little bit surprised by that, but no, this is a good one. One of the better gets that Arkansas has gotten so far. So not too shabby. And I see a lot of people talking about it in the comments. Some people asking, like, for example, here, why are we losing out on so many players? We didn't get Mahadi or Jamal Jarrett. Where is this NIL they speak of? Well, yeah, I mean, like, it's kind of hard to say, really, because those were 2 pretty prime targets there that they missed out on. But then, like, what do? You go out and sign a couple really good secondary players today, and then you get an edge rusher out of the SEC. Not as good as Jarrett, I don't think. But let's not act like Jamal Jarrett was a guy who was a starter and a game wrecker at Georgia. I mean, he was at the back end of their defensive line rotation. They're getting ready to play in the playoff next week, and he's no longer on the team. So it's not like he was that important of a piece for him. You would have liked to have him. I think he had a lot of potential. I like that he's 400-pound man or whatever. But it's not it's a miss, and I don't know who else they're on the defensive line that would maybe make up for that. But they're getting some dudes. Like, I mean, I bet they had to spend a little bit of money on Jordan Young here. Yeah,
they did, and I don't know how much, but you're needing to bolster and help all that out. And honestly, the defense, all of it needs work. You still need some more players, but the defense is starting to come together a little bit better. We mentioned linebacker. That you'd like maybe another one there, but you seem confident, or you feel confident that they could be a team that's better next year, or maybe just as good. The secondary is starting to come together. The D-line, again, yeah, you missed out on him, but, it goes back to my thing about Deke Adams, where I think he's a solid coach because he has solid defensive lines, not elite defensive lines, not guys that are going to be like the Trey Flowers, Darius Philon, Chris Smith, Dietrich Wise type guys, but just solid, where they're able to get some pressure on the quarterback. They're able to stop the run fairly effectively. The bend and don't break type of defense, it may have a negative connotation to it, but to me, I actually like it. And I think Arkansas has done a good enough job in it so far in the transfer portal.
Yeah, I think so too. I'm ready for him to start adding a couple notable wide receivers. That's what I'd like to see. Add some guys out there who can catch the ball if Taylor Green's going to throw it. Still think they need to figure out some stuff at running back. I see a bunch of people asking about Braylon Russell and stuff. I don't know. And I gotta be honest with you, I don't care. Like I'm not following that anymore. In again, out again, visiting Ole Miss and going to be at Arkansas's practice or whatever y'all are saying in the chat. I do not know what that is. And honestly, we probably won't react to it live because it's just so subject to change.
Yeah.
It's so subject to change. And like I would like to have Braylon Russell back. I think he's a talented running back and everything, but with everything that's gone on, I mean, they obviously need to make good and damn well sure that it's that he's in, all hog, whatever, embrace the logo, whatever you want to call it. But this back and forth stuff has been just absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah. If that ended up happening again, I've always trusted coaches. Hey, if they want a player, they want a player and they're going to get him. I'll just be honest. I won't like it. I won't like him being back in the fold. I'm just going to be honest, because I don't like the way that everything's been handled by him and by his representation and all of that. But hey, if Arkansas wants him, if Pittman wants to deal with that headache, have at it. But, and he is a good player. I think he would help if on the field wise, I think he would help. But I'm also not going to sit here and pretend that, what all transpired and what all went down just erased from memory and everything. Like, it's always going to be, whether it's right or wrong, that's always going to be following him. And that's always something I'm going to think about. So
yeah.
But yeah.
Crazy times, man. Crazy times for sure. Chan says, is everybody feeling a little more optimistic after today, or am I delusional? Woo pig. I don't think you're delusional. I don't think you're delusional at all.
No.
People can look at it any way they want to. And it's like the folks who are, the Kool-Aid sippers or whatever, can look at all of these additions and go, hey, these guys are getting better. Man, I really like these additions in the secondary. The folks who are looking for a reason to be, irritated or frustrated or negative or pile on Sam Pittman can go, man, they whiffed on their number one running back target and their number one defensive line target today. So it's a give or take. And for us, we just react in real time to all of it. So for me, I'm kind of in between. Like I'm very pleased with the additions that they've made. And I'm also disappointed with the guys that they whiffed on. That's just kind of the reality of the situation. But they definitely got better in the secondary. Ain't no doubt about that.
Well, if you're using like a little grading system of like where I feel of it at current state, which is subject to change always, but if you're doing the A, B, C, D, F scale, I'm feeling right now at probably like a C plus B minus for Arkansas in the portal, where
I think so.
it can go up, depending on who they get. But there's also been some players that you really wanted that you've missed out on, and so and I look at it as if you go C plus or above, it's between a mild, very marginal success or a major success. So right now, I'd say they've been mildly successful coming out of the portal. And we'll see if for a few of these players end up and what ends up happening. Because I know one of them, a lot of people are wondering about Courtney Crutchfield, the wide receiver. When is he going to pop? Because everyone's feeling that he's going to be at Arkansas. When that happens, that'll help. I'm not saying he's a world beater, but it's a guy that you at least are familiar with that could help you out in the wide receiver room. So they can do some things that can really up that grade. But right now, I'm saying they mildly, marginally have been successful in the transfer portal so far.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm with you for sure on the overall standpoint. And it's funny too, because like if we went position by position, there are some right now we could look and go F, but then there are others like I would be the secondary. I might give a minus to. I mean, it's been pretty good there. So yeah, it's all over the board and it kind of averages out. But we'll see. And here we are again, John. This is the fourth. If people are subscribed to Inside Arkansas's YouTube channel, this is the fourth time they've seen my face, and it's not even noon. I had a basketball preview this morning. I've done this 3 times. I'm not gaslighting. I don't think Arkansas is done in the portal, whether it's today or tomorrow. I'm expecting probably a couple more. Over the course of this weekend. We got the Pod at the Palace post game later. We'll have the report card Sunday morning. Y'all are gonna get tired of me, man. I think people are just gonna get tired of my face. I might just turn the camera off on the next one and just do the voice. Yeah,
well, see, that's what I was thinking. Is like, hey, just get creative with it. Do like one of those AI things, and just put it out there and say how it happens. But I mean, it's been an insane day. I like to tweet that out every so often, but it's been an insane day so far, and it's going to continue to be an insane day. But I did want to address one thing before we get out of here, because I know there's going to be another pop here soon and everything, because it's just going to happen. And I got to find the chat. I should have started. But anyway, somebody was coming after me about Hudson Clark and saying, he's like, dude, stop talking about him. He has no eligibility left. Leave it alone or whatever. Hey, here it is. He says, bruh, Hudson's out of eligibility. He can't come back. Bruh, no, he's not. All right. Confirmed from Hudson himself and his fiance. He can technically still come back. So up yours. Anyways, so that'll do it for us here, as we got 2 for 1 here in the Razorback transfer portal here on Pod of That Nature, talking about Justus Boone as well as Jordan Young. we'll be live again at some point today, whether it's for the Pod at the Palace post-game show or what more likely will happen, another commit for the Razorbacks. So be sure to subscribe right here at Inside Arkansas. Follow us on social media at Inside Arkansas and check out our website, InsideArkansas.com. For Curtis Wilkerson, I'm John Nabors. We'll see you on the next live stream and the next Portal Pop. Have a great rest of your afternoon, everybody. See you then.